Hospital Porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV. Team Tesla! Yeah, I'm actually in this little place here, as you can see, in this little alleyway, which is down the side of the school there. I'm heading to the cinema. It's another one of my roving reviews. I always love doing. I know you guys love them too, so I'm doing another one. And this little back alleyway is actually quite a good way of getting to the cinema. It's a bit closer. It's a lot more pleasant, apart from the abandoned shopping trolleys and things like that. It's a bit overgrown this time of year, July. But I'm going to see a film called The Current War. And as soon as I saw the trailer for this, I thought, I've got to go and see it. Because it's all about this, one of the most dramatic conflicts in the history of science and technology. It really is. It's the battle of which electric current would inherit the Earth. It's set in this amazing backdrop where really the whole world has been revolutionised by electricity in the late 18th and the late 19th century, late 1800s. There was net was along here. Oh, it is overgrown. Should I have gone the other way? I don't know. Some barbs there, some brambles. Anyway, yeah, there was a massive. Oh, look. Just one moment. Are these ripe? That one's ripe. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, that's a bit. It's a bit early, but they're still ripe. Excuse me a moment. That was a nice big one there. Look at that. Got to get that. That's a juicy big one. Oh man, yeah. Aren't they lovely? Sorry, where was I? What was I talking about? It's raining slightly, sorry. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, I'm going to the cinema to see The Current War. Right, yeah. In sort of late 1800s, there was a big conflict because electricity was taking over the Earth. Electricity, which today, of course, is, as you know, is really the foundational power delivery system for all of society and civilization. Notice I say power delivery system, not power generation. Electricity is not a power source. It's a power transmission method. It's a power deployment method. So yeah, now the thing about it is, of course, this was the establishment of the first national grids, and there were basically two rival camps in the world of engineering over what kind of electricity it would be. One was led by a guy called Thomas Edison. He's a famous inventor. He also invented the light bulb, I believe, and the phonograph, which became like the record player. Oh God, anyone younger than me is going, what's he talking about, record player? What's a record player? What? Oh. Can you imagine iTunes on a black plastic dinner plate? That's a record. Got it, kids? But anyway, yeah, that's Edison was a very clever man, no doubt about that, but his system for electricity was direct current, which is the system, is actually the kind of electrical supply you get in small battery powered devices. Anything run off a battery is electrical current, DC. And there was a rival in the form of a partnership between George Westinghouse and Nikola Tesla, two very, very famous names. All three of these guys are very famous geniuses in the history of engineering and science. And it was Tesla's idea actually for the whole national grid. That's mains electricity to be AC, alternating current, AC, so that every so often it switches between North and South Pole continuously. And guess what? Well, we know that AC won because, oh God, look at this. Need a machete. We know that AC won because AC is what we use today. We use Tesla's system in mains electricity in the 21st century. Over 100 years after he actually did it. Now, it got very bitter though, because Edison, I mean, I may well say more after the film, of course, because I'm just telling you what I know now. Oh God, look at them. Look at that. I'm going to have some of that. No, they're not ripe. No, I've got to stop eating these things. They're just lovely. They're nature's gifts. Got to eat them. Bit sour, that one. So, all right. AC1, but you see, there was what known as there was the War of the Currents, and the title film is The Current War. You're going to have AC mains electricity or DC mains electricity, and they're currents, and AC1. That's the basis of what we're talking about here. But it was very bitter. In fact, Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison were awarded, and they were nominated for the Nobel Prize in about, I think it was about 1905, I think. And both of them turned it down because there was going to be a joint prize, and they refused to share it with the other because their rivalry was so bitter, and the animosity was so great. And well, there was a lot of history between those guys, which I'll talk about. Now, the most important person in this particular saga is Nikola Tesla, and I've talked about him before on Panwo TV. Nikola Tesla is one of the greatest unsung heroes in the history of science, absolutely without a doubt. And the full impact of his work, his full legacy, has never really been appreciated. And of course, I'll say a lot about this after the film, I'm sure, because I'll be inspired. But you know, there's almost no limit to the depths of complexities of what he actually achieved. He was born, Nikola Tesla. He was a Serbian, born in 1856 in Serbia. What is today's Serbia? It was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, I think, back then. I'm not sure, but it wasn't independent, I don't think. Anyway, apparently there was a big thunderstorm the night he was born, and the priest was there saying, "Oh, that's going to be a child of darkness born during a thunderstorm." And apparently, when his mother was first holding him in her arms, she said, "No, my son will be a child of light." Anyway, he didn't go on very well at school, basically because he was just too clever. He was just a prodigy, you know. He was also, I suppose, even though the diagnosis didn't exist in those days, he was what we would today call autistic. He had Asperger's syndrome, and of course many great thinkers do. It's a well-known fact. He had also what we would, another modern term, obsessive compulsive disorder. He had obsessive compulsive disorder. He was obsessed with certain things. He couldn't bear others, which is rather strange. For example, he was always terrified of catching diseases from other people, to the point where if he shook someone's hands, he'd have to go away and wash his hands. He wouldn't eat. He used to douse down his entire dining room with 18 napkins soaked in bleach before he'd eat there, to kill all the germs. Now, I was watching a MGTOW video, you know, men going their own way. It listed some great MGTOWs. It claimed that Tesla was a MGTOW. Now I'm going to do an entire video on MGTOW pretty soon. It's a long, complicated subject. But men going their own ways, basically men who are voluntary celibates, heterosexual men primarily who are voluntary celibates, and they say, "Oh, Tesla, look, this is what you can achieve if you don't let women into your life. Look at Nikola Tesla, wasn't he wonderful?" Tesla was not a MGTOW. Tesla, it's true, Tesla never, as far as we know, he never got married, and as far as we know, he never had a girlfriend. But it wasn't because he was a MGTOW. It wasn't a choice he made. It was unfortunately a product of his condition. As you say, if you can hardly bear to shake someone's hand without going away and washing your hands, then sex is out of the question. Impossible. It's a shame, but he suffers from this condition, which meant he couldn't have a girlfriend. It's a great shame. In today's world, he might have been able to. They put him in for treatment probably, but he didn't have that back then. But he was a genius. He also dropped out of university because he had a bit of a breakdown because he was working so hard. But he worked in his own things. He was very much an individualist. He was a maverick. He was a bit like me, really. He couldn't fit in with conventional social norms or intellectual norms, but apparently he needed very little sleep. He only slept about 2 hours every night. But he did go to university, and then he dropped out. He went to the United States, I think, in 1880, and arrived with nothing, not a penny. He was a penniless immigrant. In those days, America was opening its door to all the immigrants it could get, the modern descendants of the Americans of today. And Tesla arrived, but he teamed up with a chap called Thomas Edison. Clever guy, yeah. And they worked together in a laboratory designing machines and things like that. Worked on electricity together. And then, maybe I'm giving away the plot of the movie here, but you see, I know the story already. See, that's the thing. Edison shafted him, basically. Refused to pay him, tricked him. You know, Tesla was quite a naive man. As I said, like a lot of these sort of non-conformists are. Because he didn't fit in with the normal codes of society, he didn't understand. He didn't quite grasp the moral corruption of society. There's a wonderful phrase I saw someone used to describe Tesla. He says, Tesla understood the universe but couldn't understand the world. I think that's wonderful. That sums up Nikola Tesla perfectly. Edison basically screwed him, which I think contributed to the lifelong animosity these two guys had for each other and the bitterness with which the current war was fought. It probably would have been less. There'd probably been less vitriol if there hadn't been this existing animus between them, and possibly a just cause for Tesla. You know, if he was really screwed like that. Yeah, but you know, Tesla is underrated. I mean, we know the word Tesla really through Elon Musk's Tesla Motors. That's the only time we use the word today. Few people actually know what it stands for. I've got an itchy back. Hang on, I'm just itching myself on this post. Funnily enough, I've told this story before on previous videos. Regular viewers will know this because I've told it several times. But this is an idea of how underrated Tesla is, because there's a new MRI, magnetic resonance imager magnet, was delivered to my hospital. I was talking to the radiographer about it, and he said, this is one of the most powerful magnets in the world. It's a 4T magnet. And I said, right. And I said to him, I already knew the answer, but I said, T, what does T stand for? He said, I don't know. It's magnetic power as measured in T's. T's. Now, this is weird, right? This is really weird. It's going under a bridge now. You'll feel to hear those sort of acoustics change. My back's still bloody itching. Could somebody scratch it for me, would you? T stands for Tesla. The unit of magnetic inductance is the Tesla with a small t. Yeah, and this guy didn't know this. This guy's a radiographer, which means he must have studied science. He must have studied physics and chemistry to A-level standards. To become a radiographer, you've got to do that. I'm a hospital porter. I dropped out of school age 16 with 1 GCSE in English. Yet I knew what T stood for and he didn't. That's a testimony to how Nikola Tesla has been dropped out of society. Anyway, you could say revenge is sweet. Tesla did get his revenge in the end. And I'm I'm probably spoiling a lot. I'm talking about a lot of this film that I'm going to see already, so I'm going to have to go through again after I've seen the film. It's just I know the story. What I'm curious to find out is I want to see how Tesla is portrayed in this film, because there's a hidden side to Tesla. I mean, like I say, Tesla is underrated, but I mean, even those who appreciate his contribution to electrical engineering and the development of the modern electrical system. And so he has 25 patents that we still use today. The various kinds, various electrical components of circuits and things like that. We still use them today. He used pioneer X-rays and things like that. I mean, this man's he's one of the creators of the modern world. But what I want to know is, will anything be said about his work on free energy? That's the bottom line. That's why I'm curious to see this film. Will anything be said on his work on free energy? And ironically, we're just passing the Oxford Science Park that's over there. It's a lovely, lovely quiet spot here. I often do filming in this area. Will anything be said about that, I wonder? Now, see, Nikola Tesla, very careful. There's another phrase that comes to mind. It perfectly illustrates Tesla. Another very poignant little catchphrase, proverb, that illustrates the issue with Nikola Tesla. Whenever we flick a light switch, we thank Tesla for the light, but we thank JP Morgan for the bill. JP Morgan is an industrial financier. He's the owner of the most famously in popular culture, he's the owner of White Star Lines, which among its fleet was the Titanic. And I don't think it was sunk on purpose. No. I know some of you think it was like scuttled. No, the Titanic was not scuttled. Oh God, I don't want to go off topic now and get into an argument about the Titanic. I'll save that for another video. But JP Morgan teamed up with Tesla later in his career because Tesla had this idea. Tesla was fascinated by wireless energy. I mean, there's a lot of, along with wires and things like that and mains electricity, people are fascinated by wireless, the fact that you could transmit electromagnetic fields through space. And there's a lot of science being done into this, and the practical applications were amazing because in I believe, was it about 1900? I can't remember, but sometime in that period, Marconi, the famous radio pioneer, created wireless transmissions, and he did the first wireless transmission across the Atlantic Ocean. So no need for these cumbersome cables they were draping across the seabed. Wireless telegrams became a reality, and Tesla worked out that you could actually transmit energy the same way. Electrical energy could be transmitted through the air. Indeed, some of it, small amounts can. I mean, that's what wireless radio is. You have an aerial, the aerial becomes charged with electricity in a certain pattern, which then is translated into sound or pictures if it's a television, and you have radio. Oh dear, that pub's gone. That's a shame. It's a lovely old pub there. I met that Jack guy in there first time I saw him. I talked about Jack before, Jack of the Antarctic. I met him in there. It's hundreds of years old, that pub. It's gone. So Tesla, see, he realised not only did he realise that power could be transmitted wirelessly, he realised that the power itself didn't need to be generated. It could actually be created. I can't remember the actual terminology he used, but he said there is power, but there's power everywhere. Power is all around us. The Earth itself is an electrical generator. I've got something on the lens. Hang on a sec. I've got a suitable t-shirt anyway, they're chemtrails, and I've got my dark conspiracy hat, the forum that no longer exists. That was my first forum years ago. Anyway, yeah, Tesla said there was basically, he said, I found a way to create power out of the very fabric of the Earth. Now the Earth itself actually is a collector and accumulator of electricity, electrical energy, which is everywhere. It's in the atmosphere. Some of it comes from solar interaction with the sun, but not all of it. Some of it is like it comes from the 0 point field. So this is like free energy. Well, Tesla built something called the Tesla Tower. He built it to a place called Wardenclyffe on Sound, which is on Long Island, New York, USA. Huge tower, 150 feet high, made of electrical circuits in the form of metallic frameworks, a big dome on the top, a Tesla coil on the top, and it had deep foundations of electrical transducers, electrodes pushed down into the earth, even deeper than it was high. They drilled holes, I think 200 feet deep or something, and it was wonderful. That was built. It took a long time to build because it was such a complicated structure. But JP Morgan, what happened was it was created by a business. It was built by a business that was established by JP Morgan and Nikola Tesla. The thing is, JP Morgan was another Edison. What happened was, I'm sure this is after the current war. This is like a decade or more after the current war. So this might not be in the movie. But JP Morgan screwed him. JP Morgan, it was a very simple setup. Tesla did all the work and JP Morgan kept the money. Well, he kept 51%. He had a 51% share. That's a typical two-man business deal where one person gets all the control. 51% share. Which meant technically 49% of the business, like the revenue, he was a 49% shareholder at Tesla. But he had no control at all because he was a minority shareholder. This turned him into a sleeping partner. So he did all the work, he did all the engineering and scientific work, and JP Morgan sort of like lived comfortably off his income. And in the end, and now, in a sense, Tesla was not honest with JP Morgan, and I think maybe Tesla understood deep down, even though I said he was a very naive man, he trusted many people he shouldn't have trusted. Again, similar to myself in that sense, at least how I used to be. But Nikola Tesla told Morgan at first that he was building a communications device. It was simply connected to Marconi's system of wireless communication. Tesla was amazing. Tesla said one day, Tesla said amazing things. He said one day, not long in the future, he said, people will have communication device. Communication will become so efficient that people will be able to talk to each other from devices, electrical devices, that they will simply carry around with them in their pocket. What's that? Mobile phones. But anyway, he said basically he told Morgan that he was going to do that. He told Morgan essentially that was what he was building at Wardenclyffe-on-Sea, the tower. And then Morgan found out what it was really for. It was actually it was an experiment for power generation from the free energy field inside the Earth. And Tesla said he was going to distribute it. And because it cost nothing, because it was free energy, it cost nothing to generate, he was going to distribute it free of charge. And I'm not going to repeat the points I made in my free energy video about that. But let's just say JP Morgan, with a $63 million fortune in railways, powered by coal, fossil fuel, this is in the pre-oil age, was not too happy about that. He wasn't jumping for joy and looking for a way to invest in this new opportunity. No, he said this has got to be shut down. I mean, $63 million in today's money is like, I think it's about 8 billion. Tesla was a multi-billionaire by today's standard. No, not Tesla. Tesla never became a very rich. Tesla, it was Morgan. Sorry, Morgan became like was a multi-billionaire. Nikola Tesla died in the last few decades of his life. He was actually very poor. When he died, he was 86 years old and living in a single room with hardly any money, just doing his work privately. It was 1943, and he was just living. He was on his own, completely alone, living on a diet of milk and cream crackers. And when he died, before the undertakers were even allowed in to pick up the body, the FBI sealed the room off and they confiscate everything. The books he was writing, his papers, his prototypes, his blueprints, everything. And those documents remain classified to this day. And I want to know, is the film I'm about to see going to go into that area? Wardenclyffe-on-Sea, the tower was demolished on the 4th of July 1917. That's not one for fireworks. Very unhappy Independence Day that was. Well, I'm here now anyway. That there is the Kassam Stadium, Oxford United's famous ground, horseshoe-shaped ground. Ellis Taylor will tell you a lot about that. The cinema is over here, and I'm going to go in there. As I said, I'm curious about what this film is going to tell us, but I'm also curious about what it might not tell us. We'll soon find out, won't we? Only one thing to do. Let's go in and watch the movie. See you when I come out. I came out. I don't know what time it is. And looked. It stopped raining anyway. I'm gonna head off home now. Whoa, that was interesting. Very well made film, I thought. Obviously a lot of thought's gone into it. There's like very clever graphics. There's some CGI animation in it and some pretty good makeup. The actual characters have been made to look like the actors have been made to look like the characters they play. The characters look like very much like the real people they play. And it's all about where am I now? Hang on. it starts very dramatically. There's people on a train, and I don't want to give you spoilers, but then the train stops. It's like this big old steam engine starts in 1880, and there's a big long steam train, and this the people have to get out the train, walk, and then they walk into this thing, and it's like a circle of light bulbs. You've seen this in the trailer, actually. It's Thomas Edison. He's there, and he's arranged all these bulbs in like a circle, because he invented these bulbs, and it's like, you know, like the incandescent bulb with the filament in, which they now ban you from using because of carbon emissions. But and these rich guys on the train, you know, and he says, gentlemen, he lights these lights up. It's like a crop circle almost in the middle of a field, and this thing lights up around. There's like a crop circle of light bulbs, and these light bulbs light up. You know, gentlemen, I hope you brought your checkbooks with you. Meaning he's always very confident, Edison. Well, Thomas Edison, like, he's sort of like rough and ready kind of guy, kind of tough industrialist. So's Westinghouse, but they're like. Edison certainly is played by old Bend My Dick Cucumber Snatch. He's obviously finished doing Sherlock Holmes now, so he does it. Edison. He's a very versatile actor. I must say, he's got a pretty good American accent, considering he can do like. So I suppose he's a posh English bloke. I remember Benedict Cumberbatch was actually in a BBC production about Stephen Hawking. It was called Hawking. And I tell you what, it's a lot better than The Theory of Everything. I remember it well. I've got the DVD of that. I thought it was so good. But of course, Westinghouse at that time is like he's just into gas and things like that. He's working on Gaslight. Whole thing's on Gaslight. And I made notes in a cinema. And because I can't see what I'm doing, I'm sort of like pretty sort of like a bit scrappy, the notes. Now, there's all sorts of the lighting's good in this film, and there's all kinds of little sort of like devices, like there's candles everywhere. In the first scene with Westinghouse, when he's at a party, George Westinghouse is this other guy who's like a pioneer he's been working on alternating current. But he's like, where am I? Oh, I've gone the wrong way. Sorry, there's the old pub there. I was going the wrong way. He's a pioneer of electric. He's doing alternating current, but he's not solved all the problems yet. That's why he needs Tesla. But you have he's in this party with people, and there's candles everywhere. It's like a world without electricity kind of thing. It reminds me of the film, a very bad film that was made of a very good book, Northern Lights, or not the Amber Spyglass. Yeah, the Amber Spyglass. That was it. What's it called? I can't remember. It's one of the Philip Pullman, but it's the first in the Philip Pullman Dark Materials trilogy. And the book is excellent. The film is not so good. The Amber Spyglass is the art part. There's a Subtle Knife, the Amber Spyglass, and in Northern Lights is the first one. But in America, it's called something different. I can't remember what. But it's like that. It's kind of like a spooky feel to it. And then Edison is portrayed very respectfully. I mean, he's very anti-war. He says he won't build weapons, which is a bit of a scandal later on, right? Because he gets involved in a deal to build the first electric chair. It's quite at a prison to kill people. He won't use the word electrocution. That hasn't been coined yet, but he tries to turn George Westinghouse's name into a verb for killing people with electric, because he wants to convince everyone that alternating current is deadly, it'll kill people. He says, you'll see people leaning against a lamppost in the middle of the street and dying if you ever allow AC to power your city, and things like that. A lot of this, there's a lot of Project Fear, as Boris Johnson would call it, in the whole current war. Now, he's portrayed respectfully. I think he's anti-war. There's a couple of flashbacks to him as a young man when he's because there's a scene from the American Civil War, and he's like, it's only a very quick scene, but he keeps repeating where he's like a Union officer and this Confederate guy, where the old sun hat comes up and starts pointing a gun at him. There's a car coming, I was going the other way. It's a footpath, it's supposed to be. Tesla's first introduced to us, and again, the actor's very good. Looks just like him. Accurate, you know, speaks English with this strong Eastern European accent, which is what Tesla was like. And he's announced as someone who's not interested in money, and he was. Tesla, you see, I suppose he was like me in that way. Like I said, he's kind of like unconventional. And he thinks he could have been very rich if he was more. See, he was like, as it's that old phrase, you know, what I said earlier, he understood the universe, but he didn't understand the world. And Westinghouse really sort of takes him under his wing because, of course, in the scene is it actually begins with Tesla's arrival in the States. He arrives on a ship, and he immediately starts working for Edison. Edison screws him. You know, offers him, like I said, I'll pay you like $2.50 for this, that, and the other for your regular juice. I'll pay you $50,000 if you make an invention. But when he tries to help in the laboratory, he goes up to Edison and says, "Look, switch." In other words, they keep saying, "You got to switch now. You got to switch now," meaning go to AC. He says, "I can make AC work. It's better." And then Edison, just his ego gets the better of him, and he sacks Tesla. And Tesla says, "What about the 50 grand?" So I'm not paying you that. He says, "I've invented something." He says, "I was only joking." So, you know, he was a nasty man in that way, like Thomas Edison. He was. That was unpleasant. And then Tesla, you see, Tesla goes on to, I can't even read my own notes. That's what happens when you write in the dark. DC's not as good. You need a power. I mean, he's like, there's a scene where he's on like he's got all his notes and spread out on a snooker table, and he's got a map there, and he's putting the red balls right across Manhattan Island in New York City. And he says that's where all the power stations are going to be, because with DC you need a power station every few feet, and that's one of the problems with it. But of course Westinghouse and Tesla say, well, see, Tesla, he signs a contract with another man, but they offer him, it's the usual deal, it's 51, give us 51% of the company, and sell us your patents. So he sells them all the patents, or patents, I don't know how you pronounce that. But of course then they screw him. And it's funny, you know, the most interesting part of the film is where you have this guy he's working for says, "I don't want to listen to your pie in the sky ideas," or something like that. And guess what what Tesla's done? He's built a model of the Wardenclyffe Tower. And of course this is like in the 1890s, long before the tower's actually built. I was wrong about the timing of the war and the currents. I said it was like in around about 1900. It was actually about 10 years earlier than that. It was like around in the early 1890s was when the War of the Currents really was. What's I say? Edison's what? Oh, Edison's wife dies. That's it. DC power stations. Yeah, that's it. I'm just trying to read my notes now. Edison is quite a good talker. I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch is a good actor. I mean, he like I said, he can portray these well, and he's always using metaphors. He says, if some guy builds a fence, and I think to myself, you know, it's nice he's built that fence. He pays for it, he builds it. What about me on the other side? I get a free fence and things like that. He's always using metaphors like that. Very clever, that, I think. That is a clever device. I'm going down the footpath again. I think didn't he just prefer a bit of privacy? Yeah, good acting. All in all, I don't know who the actor is who played Tesla, but he's very good. There you are. Funny enough, like, you know, I was saying that Tesla. I mean, Tesla, as I said, it's sad. He died in the New Yorker Hotel, room 3327, in 1943, just lying on a bed. He's really, you look at the pictures of him when he's old, and he's like really emaciated. I mean, like I say, he was eating cream crackers. He was living off cream crackers and milk. He's just lying this very thin waif, this 86-year-old skeleton. And then he just lay there while the FBI confiscated all his work, everything he'd ever done. Oh dear. So, let's get my notes on now. The funny thing is about going back to Edison, he comes during the Skoll experiment. He comes through. I don't know if you've read that book or you've watched the documentary. You get the documentary on YouTube, it's very good. I know I'm supposed to be making a video about that, aren't I? I'm supposed to be going to Skoll. It's on my to-do list. God, my to-do list is like expanding at the rate of... It's getting longer at the rate of cosmic expansion. I need to slow down. But Thomas Edison came through at Skoll and he put his signature on one of the films, one of the unexposed films. And TAE, just signs everything TAE. And they compared it with samples of his own signatures, which there are many because he was giving lots of autographs. And yep, you see it matches. There's no doubt Edison was a genius and he created a lot of wonderful things, like the cine projector, for example, which is what I was watching the movie on. The cine projector, a device that allows you to see moving pictures. Before that, I mean, it must have been amazing when he first saw pictures moving. And of course it works very simply, it just shows you a series of pictures all slightly different. And you see it as motion, your brain interprets, the visual part of your brain interprets it as motion. And Edison invented it, and the light bulb, like I said, so Westinghouse and Tesla they have a partnership, and Westinghouse is the first person who doesn't screw Tesla, and actually treats him with respect. It's because Tesla was not a businessman. He was not a businessman. And a lot of people like that. You see, some people are very brilliant in some ways, but they just don't. They just do not have it in them to understand, like, that sort of feet on the ground thing you need for business. Some people just don't have that. He was one of them. But Tesla worked on AC with Westinghouse, and they built a hydroelectric plant at Niagara Falls, a famous waterfall on the US-Canadian border. It's a beautiful site there. And he does a speech where he says he talks about the need to detach power from profit, and that's like kind of what he was saying with the... Yeah. Yeah. Trying to read my bloody writing. It's a funny meeting. I think there's a meeting. Funny enough, like it all culminates in the famous Chicago World Fair of 1892, where they want an electric light display there, just to demonstrate the wonders of electricity. And Edison and Westinghouse both have to bid for the contract, and of course Westinghouse wins. But Tesla, actually one of the last scene of the film is Tesla doing a speech, and about how our ideas are the most important things. He says monuments mean nothing, they can crumble. He says ideas are what counts, intelligence, and that's what we leave behind, which is eternal. Very interesting. Yeah. Funny enough, Westinghouse and Edison bump into each other at this World Fair. They're visiting like an exhibition where there's some Chinese ladies doing Chinese writing, calligraphy kind of thing, and they just start talking like in a friendly manner, and Edison talks about Edison, there's like this dramatic music plays in the background, and Edison talks about the joyous moments he feels when he first invented a light bulb that lasted longer than 13 hours. And how we change bulbs all the time. For a while, there was one that wouldn't last 10 minutes, and suddenly he got just the right ingredient for the filament, or just the right kind of noble gas to fill the bulb with, or just the right kind of glass to put over the bulb. And suddenly he's got a bulb that will last for 13 hours. A light bulb. And he said they all sit there, they cheer, and they just look at their watches and everything. After 10 hours, they go quiet. And then when the 13th hour comes and it goes pop, they just sit there in silence, in the awe of what they've created. It's like, quite really dramatic. Oh, shall I? Yeah, I'm going to have one. Yeah, I think I deserve it. Thank you, nature. These are nature's gifts, so thank you, nature. Can't eat them all. Be here all day. Thank you, nature. So, yeah, there's some nice ones up there, see? This is just delightful to me. You don't pay for this, come from nature. In our world, we're so cut off from nature. I swear there's people who think, you can buy these in supermarkets. People who they grow in those plastic tubs. Anyway, all in all though, the film did not focus. That's why I think it let me down, or let us down. It did not focus on the wider aspects of Nikola Tesla's work. The closest we get to that is the scene where he's about to be shafted by another business partner. After he sold them their patents for a discount, they really took advantage of him. And he basically and this business partner is just about to kick him out of the business, cash in his share, just give him cash in his shares and kick him out. Take everything he owns, everything he's worked for, taken off him. This guy, his so-called business partner, sort of pat. You see the picture of the Wardenclyffe-on-Sea tower. Why not focus again? Come on, focus. That's it. That's better. Tesla's like built a model, just a little model about 6 inches high, of the Wardenclyffe-on-Sea tower, which he wasn't due to build for more than a decade to come in full scale, and that's when JP Morgan came back and screwed him. Yet this investor, this crook, this fraudster, sort of pats it in a patronising manner and says, I don't have time for these. I can't remember the exact line, but he says, pie in the sky dreams, that's all you're good for, and he pats this model in a patronising manner. That is literally the closest we get to any of the larger issues associated with Nikola Tesla. That's as close as we get. And that is disappointing. That's a big disappointment. It is, of course, there are occasional hints, like I said in the script, in that particular scene, where you get the impression there is more to Tesla than we're being told. There's a scene where he says, what's happening is Westinghouse is saying the world will not be paved in concrete or stone, the world will be paved with copper wires. He's getting all romantic about, they use a lot of romantic poetic language to describe this new revolution that electricity is bringing. And Tesla says, well, we don't really need wires. Why do you talk about wires? Electricity can work without wires. And I thought, go on. Then they cut to another scene. Because this is what Tesla was famous for. And it's kind of that's like where the film lets us down. I mean, to be honest, I was expecting that. It's called The Current War, because it's about the current war, the War of the Currents. It's about that. It's about this particular event, which was only a small part of what Tesla did. Indeed, what Edison did and Westinghouse did. I mean, all these guys, Westinghouse, all-round good general. He was a very general, good engineer. I mean, he built the Westinghouse company, went a long way. And Edison's General Electric did a lot of other things. I remember all the logo, the General Electric, old-fashioned type writing. It's on everything. It's on equipment in my hospital. And so this was just a small part of the entire life and career of all three of the main characters: Tesla, Westinghouse, Edison. So I wasn't really expecting this to be revelatory. I wasn't expecting it to delve into all the kind of Panwo-esque areas which I've talked about while I was on my way to the cinema, the fact that Tesla basically was a free energy inventor. He was a free energy inventor and he wanted to bring free electricity to everyone. Didn't talk about the fact that he teamed up later on, after the War of the Currents, he did a business deal with Henry Ford. What he was going to do was, Henry Ford, the great motor maker, Henry Ford produced the first mass-produced cars. He invented the Ford Model T, the first mass-produced car. I think that's 1905, I think that was. And because it's mass-produced, it was so much cheaper than other cars, because, of course, cars were only just starting to replace horses. And horses and carts. And so the Model T was the first car that was cheap enough for ordinary people to afford it, rather than just rich people. Cars were things just rich people had until then. And Tesla, the thing is, it was petrol driven. But you see, the thing is, what happened was originally there were two lines. There was a tiny little electric cars, and there was a line of petrol cars. Let's give you a quick 360 while I munch. Lovely. Can't be bought their shopping trolleys back, honestly. I used to go and collect them when I was a kid, because you have to put a pound in a slot and unhook. And people left them lying around, I used to wheel them back and get the money out. Supplement to my pocket money when I was a kid. They don't have those anymore. Anyway, I was talking about bloody cars, wasn't I? Yeah. There were electric cars. There were a lot of electric cars in the early era of motoring from Henry Ford and his company. And the first line of Model Ts, there was like an electric and there was a petrol line. Now what happened was, you can actually see some of these electric cars. There's actually an old film made in San Francisco just before the earthquake. You can see it on YouTube. There's an old film on the main street in San Francisco just before the 1906 earthquake, which destroyed much of the city, killed a couple of thousand people. There is actually and you could see some of these electric cars in this whole film. So the question is, why is it only now, in the second decade of the bloody 21st century, that there's a large number of electric vehicles on the roads? And there's a lot of hybrids. The buses in Oxford are hybrids. They just start, there's an electric motor, and when they're going above a certain speed, the diesel kicks in. This is just a recent development. So for over 100 years, the only cars available were electric, were petrol driven. Essentially, cars like this. Maybe not these, but these maybe have some of these could be petrol only, these cars in this road, and some of them might be hybrids or even pure electric. But for over 100 years, I mean, however much more sophisticated they are than the early petrol motor engine cars, look at the Model T, see how much more primitive it is compared to these vehicles. In essence, its function is exactly the same. It runs off petroleum in a combustion chamber with cylinders, and that's what provides the power. It's like a Stone Age propulsion system and power plant in a space age vehicle. It's weird when you think about it. When you know what you do about free energy and stuff like that, you understand it. You see these ancient forms of power, essentially combustion, like cavemen used for their fires, and you see them in these modern vehicles. You know something's not right here. And of course something is not right, and when you look at the history of Nikola Tesla, it's all encapsulated. What happened was, Tesla actually signed a business deal with Ford and said, I will provide electricity. I'll provide the electricity to run your cars. I'll show you a system about how your cars can run off their electric motors and don't need a generator and don't need to recharge. You just put this device on it, this system I got, and it will, the power will be radiated from my towers, which we bought from the earth for free, completely free. And Ford was all up for it at first, but then it was all destroyed. And guess who's behind it? the Warburg family, JP Morgan again, the Rothschilds. JP Morgan appears in this particular film. He actually gets involved with Tesla, because at first he was backing Edison in the current war. Then he tries to do this deal with Tesla. He does it twice actually. He does it over the cars with Ford, and he does it over, as I said, the experimental tower at Wardenclyffe-on-Sea. So what happened was JP Morgan managed to get Ford's electric line shut down and said, you produce only petrol cars from now on. And petrol cars are all he produced. And that's all the Ford Motor Company today produces. Well, they started an electric line up again in just the last couple of years. And that's all they did to produce for over 100 years. Petrol cars. And that's what all the other motor companies did. Oh. I'm not going to go on a free energy rant. I've done that before. I don't need to repeat the points I made in my free energy videos and my UFO videos, my UFO disclosure videos, things like that. I'm not going to repeat those points. You know what I mean here. You know how the means to generate energy, the means to do what Tesla did. He wasn't the only inventor. Tesla wasn't the only one. As I said, there are many, many people involved in this sort of production, this kind of work. Yet they dropped off one by one. Some literally dropped off of life. They were killed. But of course, it was all quashed, because as to JP Morgan himself is quoted as saying, "If I can't put a meter on it, I don't want it." He wanted to make money off it, and that's the problem, you see. And of course, as I've said before, free energy would set us all free. It would revolutionise the world, abolish poverty, abolish environmental destruction, all these other things. But JP Morgan wants his meter. He wants his bill. He wants you to pay him for the energy you use. And it's about political power as well. The control of energy is essential to control of society in general, as I've said before. Again, I'm not going to repeat the points I made in other videos. But of all the three guys, the three main characters, George Westinghouse, Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, the one who most deserves to be remembered and lionised is Nikola Tesla. And he's the one who everyone forgets. He's much less well known than the other two of those three, which is a great, great shame. And goodness me, we're paying the price for it today. I mean, I saw a picture once, and someone put a picture. This is what the world would look like in 1990 if Nikola Tesla had been allowed to do what he wanted to. And they show there's this image here. It looks literally like a scene from Star Trek. Cities up in the clouds, flying cars, things like that. It's a sci-fi image. So we are living in a theme park which is designed to look like the past. I'm like in that film, The Village. So again, that's a spoiler, isn't it? It's like that. We're living in that village. And this secrecy has to end. It's going to be painful, as I've said before. It's been painful. It's going to be painful. It's going to be a painful experience. Not just the fact that all the suffering is going to become. We're going to become aware of all the suffering. The fact that it could have been prevented more than a century ago, and in the entire history. And most of the bad things that happened during the course of the 20th century didn't need to happen. They could have been prevented, but we let them happen. We failed, but we can make amends, and we will. And that is where this film goes wrong. And I must say, I don't think that's really a criticism of the film, simply because it lies outside the film's remit. And maybe the hints they dropped with that little model of the Wardenclyffe Tower, maybe that was enough, considering the remit of the film, which just covered this one event, the current wars. But I'd say to the production team of the current war, please, don't stop now. Keep going. Keep going. Which way should I go home? I'll go this way. It's a bit longer. I might need more time to film. Keep going. Make a sequel. Make a sequel about what happened to Tesla next. Because really, the film ends in 1892 at the Chicago World Fair, where basically Tesla and Westinghouse are victorious, and they. I'll go down this alleyway. I haven't walked down here for ages. Yeah. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see a sequel. Call it not after the current war, or what Tesla did next, because that story needs to be told. And if you go to, funnily enough, I checked it out on Google Earth before I came out. The place where it is, I can't remember the name of the town, but the Wardenclyffe-on-Sea location, it's on the north coast of North Island, on the Long Island Sound. And there's a sign that says Wardenclyffe. What they've done is in 1976, to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Tesla's birth, they did put a plaque up for Tesla on the Wardenclyffe-on-Sea site. And the place where it happened is like a park, and there's this there's a polygonal shaped line on the ground, which is where the tower used to stand, and it's there. You can go and visit it, and there's a plaque there. And you know, they've named the street that runs off the main road. There's a street that runs straight off the main road. It's called Tesla Street. If I ever get to the United States, that's a place I'm going to visit, and I'll take my camera there and I'll film from there. If you want to crowdfund me to go there, I'll go. I'll do a Panwo TV special from there. Just send me the money. I'll do it. And also Niagara Falls. There's a statue of Tesla because of the hydroelectric plant that he and George Westinghouse built there. And they did it. It looked very nice. It didn't spoil the view or anything like that. They were careful to preserve the natural scenery of the falls, which are beautiful. And I mean, the opening scene of the film, you see this human figure, a guy with a hat and a raincoat, walking through this mist. And this sort of drizzle. And of course, the area below Niagara Falls is very famous because it's actually it's a place where it rains continuously. There's a ship that goes through called the Maid of the Mist, and there was continuous rainfall at the base of the Niagara Falls in this small area because it's like a microclimate, and it never stops raining because the rain is simply vapour that comes from the Niagara Falls themselves. You see this guy walking through there, and you don't know who it is. And at the end, they repeat the scene. And you see immediately that it's Nikola Tesla, and it's funny because he's like he gets a tripod and camera out, and he puts it up. You see that it's a cine camera, and he starts turning the handle. They were hand turned, these old cine cameras, and he's filming the power station, the hydroelectric power station. And then it cuts to a scene in a cinema projection, and there's a cine projector, of course, and it's showing that scene on a screen. You see a number of men watching it, and it closes on one of the audience, and you see that it's Thomas Edison. And there's a kind of irony there, you know. The irony is that that Edison is now, but Tesla is actually recording his achievement on an invention by Edison, and Edison's watching it on his own invention, the cine projector. So. But the irony, I think, is from another scene. It's like a reversal of a previous scene in the film, because there's a scene where Tesla is talking to Westinghouse about his past and about what he did, and he said that because you don't find out what happened to him between the time when he's sacked by Edison and when he gets into a partnership with this other guy, and he says, and then Joyce says, well, how did you support yourself? He said, I dug ditches. I went and I dug ditches in the road. And he said, well, what are you digging ditches for? And he says, cables for Edison's electric company. I felt like I was digging my own grave, he said. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the kind of irony of it. And the irony is reversed at the end. So there is a bronze statue for Nikola Tesla at Niagara Falls. But I hope one day, there will be a bigger statue for him, more and more of them, and there will be more of a memorial to this remarkable man, this incredible man, a man who could have created a better world, who could have created a better world in the beginning of the 20th century. Now, at the beginning of the 21st, we still don't live in that world, but we will do. Nikola Tesla's work was not in vain. We will live in that world. His work that was seized from him on his deathbed, well, after he died. As I said, they didn't even allow the body to be taken away, the FBI. that work will be that will all be declassified at some point, and we will live in the world he envisaged. So that, I think, is what was not shown in that film, and what I would have liked to have seen, and hopefully we will see in a sequel. So get working on it. I'd say that's the production team. Get working on it. So now it's time to have a look at what the papers are saying, what the critics are saying. So I wonder, is it good or bad, 5 stars or 1 stars? Let's go and find out. Alright, let's see what the critics are saying. As I've said many times, I never read a review of a film before I've seen it. I always go and see it without anyone else influencing me, and then I read the reviews afterwards. And I'm going to try something different because I mean, you know the papers I always review, and the ones that first come up on Google. I do those, but I think I'll try a different one for a change as well, because you don't want to hear the same old. Now, if you hear me speaking this funny accent, it's because it's for those of you who haven't watched my roving reviews before. It's just so you know when I'm talking and when I'm reading from the review. Okay, just so you are aware. And this is actually Now Toronto, which is a Canadian magazine, so I'll have to speak in a Canadian accent. I don't know, how do you do a Canadian accent? Good afternoon, everyone. This is Free Domain Radio. Hope you're doing well. Look, that's Stefan Molyneux. He doesn't have a Canadian accent. He has a weird accent because he lived in so many places. I'm trying to think of the Canadians I know. The Current War by Norman Wilner. This is here we go. Every year, TIFF welcomes a prestigious picture poised for a flashy launch that will lead to Oscar glory. The 2017 edition is The Current War. 2017? Don't they mean 2019? This is dated 2017. How can it have been released in Canada in 2017? It's not been released in Britain till now? No, that doesn't often happen. Normally films are released pretty close to each other all over the world. Anyway, The Current War. An all-star dramatization of the battle between Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse to bring electricity to America. It's very expensive and very busy, and it's utterly forgettable. Oh dear. Though the director of record is Gomez Rejon, that's his name, Gomez Rejon, or how do you pronounce that? Rejon, I don't know. Who's following Me and Earl and a Dying Girl with a very different but equally shallow production. The real auteur here is producer Harvey Weinstein. Oh, 2017. We didn't know about him, did we? Didn't know he's a nonce back then, did we? Who is mining history for anecdotes that he can turn into a costume drama. It's not just the casting of Benedict Cumberbatch as a prickly genius and certain structural tics in Michael Micknick's script that remind one of The Imitation Game. Imitation. There's a playbook here, and no one is allowed to deviate too far from it. No one's allowed to deviate too far from it, if you didn't understand that. My accent is that bad. Well, it is sort of forgettable I think it's for different reasons. But anyway, the Current War tries to build a personal beef between Cumberbatch's brand-focused monomaniacal Edison and Michael Shannon's predatory capitalist Westinghouse. I didn't think Westinghouse was a predator. Westinghouse wasn't portrayed as a predatory capitalist. J.P. Morgan was. Westinghouse was not. Westinghouse was actually portrayed in quite a decent line, actually. He was treated quite respectfully. He was quite an admirable character. Like I say, predatory capitalist, he's the only person in the entire film who doesn't try to bugger Nikola Tesla's ragged for every penny he's got. But that's just dramatic license. The two barely interact over the course of the movie, so Mitnick has to expand the roles of other key players like Edison's young assistant Samuel Insull, Tom Holland, and the engineer Nikola Tesla. Expand the roles of other key players. Nikola Tesla doesn't need his bloody role expanded. He was one of the main characters. Maybe they did want to write him out. Maybe in other films he's written out, and in which case this is a good film for bringing Nikola Tesla to where he belongs. Anyway, Nicholas Hoult was the name of the actor. There's also a subplot invention. What? There's a subplot about the invention of the electric car, electric chair. Oh, I thought you said electric car there. Oh right. I don't remember that bit. I'm sure I remember that. There's a subplot about the invention of the electric chair that seems like it
could make a movie of its own, but instead got crammed in here to add colour. Well, yeah, maybe it could. I think, but I don't think it's crammed in to add colour. It was a, maybe it did add colour, but it was an important part of the story. I mean, it reminded me, it's like The Green Mile. Have you ever seen The Green Mile? That is a film which involves the electric chair an awful lot. It's quite horrible, actually, The Green Mile. No, I mean some of the electric chair scenes are truly horrific, but The Green Mile is a great movie. It's a fantastic movie. Frank Darabont. Is it Frank Darabont? It's a great movie. Anyway, I'll carry on. The whole movie is like that. An interesting story here, an inspired composition there, and some very good actors doing what they can to pull it together, but there's nothing at the centre. There's no juice. So, pardon me for the horrible Canadian accent there, but, well, they make some good points, and it is kind of forgettable in a way, but I don't know about expanding the role. The bit that bothers me when they talk about expanding the role of other key players, like Edison's young assistant, or like Nikola, and they include Nikola Tesla in that. Did Tesla need his role expanded? Okay, so we move on to the Evening Standard. I suppose they're sort of posh, aren't they? So because I can't do the Tory graph anymore because they put it on subscription only. Anyway, so I'll talk. I suppose they talk like the Telegraph readers, don't they? The Current War Review. Even Electric Benedict Cumberbatch can't bring this corpse to life. This new release is a relic. It premiered 2 years ago in October 2017 at the Toronto Film Festival. Right, that explains it. That explains why there was a review in a Canadian newspaper so far up the Google rankings. Yeah. I didn't realise it was such an old film. I thought it had just come out. It says it often successfully used as a launching pad for an Oscars campaign. Well, that's what the other reviewer said, in the Canadian reviewer. The Current War, which has a starry cast, appeared to be just a kind of earnest biopic like The King's Speech and The Imitation Game. Oh, he mentioned The Imitation Game in the Toronto reviewer mentioned that. That scored highly in such awards at the time. Unfortunately, the festival reviewers were mediocre. Even more unfortunately, the film was produced by Harvey Weinstein, and October 27 was the month of his downfall. Alright, well, again, he's given a break. He's not bloody clairvoyant. Can't see the future. And saying all the festival reviews were mediocre. I suppose he's probably read that one I've just read. But well, if you're going to believe reviews, you're going to read it. You're going to watch the bloody movie yourself. What's this person? David Sexton of the Evening Standard. You have to watch the movie yourself. Don't bloody believe what other reviewers said. Bloody! I'm not going to go on about Weinstein. So far, right. There's another paragraph here all about Weinstein. All right. Yeah, it was a shitty deal. Weinstein was a nonce, and anyway. Anyway, let's go on to disobliging reviews such as this. It has been extensively re-edited with 5 scenes added and 10 minutes cut. Alright, so I don't know what the original was like. Apparently, because its director, Alfonso Gomez Rechon, from Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, had been so unhappy with the version that Weinstein had imposed upon it. He felt that though it had his name on it, it wasn't his. So now the film deserves to be considered in its own right, all taint removed, and it's still a turkey. Alright, so he has seen it. The Current War is about the competition from 1880 to 1893 between inventor Thomas Edison and tycoon George Westinghouse to bring electricity to America. He hasn't mentioned Nikola Tesla yet. So it says between Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse, right. The former favouring direct current and the latter alternating current. This being the form that is ultimately, the latter being the form that ultimately prevailed. The writer, Michael Mitnick, originally produced this definitely uncinematic story as an amateur musical while studying drama at Yale, which perhaps is where it should have been left rather than going through a repeated 60 drafts to arrive at this dog's dinner. The cast can't be faulted. Cumberbatch does a great job as Edison. Another of his willful geniuses, always compelling to watch and oddly accented. If you see anything it's with him in it, you know you will not be disappointed. Oh, I don't know about that. He's been in some right clangers of movies. But, yeah, he does the accent well. He has been very nattily knitted out in suits that are supposedly period, but actually would be keenly sought after in Shoreditch today. Michael Shannon is an imposing hirsute and gravelly-voiced Westinghouse, channeling Daniel Day-Lewis. Nicholas Hoult is a little over-mannered as foppish Serbian-born inventor Nikola Tesla. It's funny, you know, we'd gone down 7 paragraphs before we even have a mention of Nikola Tesla. That's odd, that, because you think, such a hipster idol these days. Is Nikola Tesla a hipster idol? No, he's not. But not quite successfully integrated into the story. Well, I think from what I've heard, he's been integrated a lot more than many people try to do. Matthew McFadden plays the financier J.P. Morgan behind a luridly inflamed nose. Tuppence Middleton makes her most brief appearance as Mrs. Edison. And she dies, yeah, that's right. Catherine Waterston is the sparkly Mrs. Westinghouse. Here's a masterpiece theatre style, almost extensively British, and almost entirely British cast. All right, filmed in the UK too. Oh, blimey! With the Freemasons Hall serving as a courtroom and Alexandra Palace and Brighton Pavilion standing in for Chicago World Fair of 1893. It did actually. I thought that was the Brighton Pavilion. There's the scene in the fair. They got this thing behind it. Looks like the Brighton Pavilion, and I thought that's got to be like something from Chicago, but it wasn't. That's interesting. Anyway, we go blah de blah de blah. Zooms, fast cuts, camera reeling around the scenes to supply energy the story lacks. Po-faced BBC merchant ivory history drama. A film school object lesson in how not to do it. There's never a moment of rest. From the cameras always suddenly becoming a fisheye or zooming down from the heavens. A drumming, bipping score assists the attempted galvanization of this corpse. The AC/DC Conflict. Oh, that's a band from Australia, I know, a rock band, but it's because of the electric currents now. And he mentions the bloody electric chair scene. It's odd, you know. They do the climactic scene at the Chicago World Fair is mixed with the actual execution of the guy in the electric chair, which is much less gruesome than the Green Mile, but it's quite similar in some ways. The Green Mile had an 18 certificate. This had a 12A. That's why. So I thought it was quite clever, actually. I thought it was quite well done. So here we have a curio redolent of an era now past, where stop going on about bloody Weinstein. Why Me Too brought him down, but it is not the least of the corruptions that he inflicted. If you'd like to see the film, there should have been, by the way, There Was Always and Forever, There Will Be Blood. I don't know what that means. Anyway, that's the Evening Standard and what they think of it. So not too good so far. And now finally, The Guardian. Yes, this is the Observer, which of course is like is produced by The Guardian, of course. And this is a review by a woman called Wendy Ide, who's looking very empowered as she stares out at the page, at the reader. 2 stars. All right. God blimey, no one's impressed with this movie. The current war review: electricity drama lacks juice. Benedict Cumberbatch and Michael Shannon can't find the vital spark in this tale of rival scientists, man. The tussle, all the warmth for circuit diagram. Michael Shannon and Benedict Cumberbatch. Oh, very funny. There's a lot of electricity motives. They think these people think they're witty, I'm sure. The tussle for supremacy and the race to power the world with electricity is rewired. As a heavyweight personality smackdown between Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse. According to this film, a long-shelved casualty of the... Oh, more about Weinstein, yeah. The professional rivalry was scarred by treachery, tragedy, and ruthlessness. A formula for a sparky period piece. Spot the electric motives, guys. Yeah, the electricity metaphors. Keep count, guys. Keep count. But there's an edge of panicky desperation to the filmmaking. The lurching, swooping cameras. I thought some of the camera work was quite good, I thought. The skittish editing and arcing lens flare. the lens flare was deliberate. Like there's a scene where Incel, the assistant, not Incel as in involuntary celibates, his name is Incel. He sort of like when he's doing his presentation for Edison, because Edison didn't do the presentation himself for the contract for the World Fair. Incel does it. There's lots of like blue lens flare coming across the screen. I think it looks quite good. It looks almost electric. I thought that was deliberate. Anyway, I got another thing. Something else is going to come up as well. Anyway, it all seems a little too eager to distract from the fact that the top-hatted, frock-coated mutton-chop chaps burbling on about the relative advantages of the alternating current versus direct current system does not, in fact, make for electrifying drama. Oh, good. I'm surprised they haven't said yet, and they're all white men. Oh, they're all evil white men. I bet they've got slaves, and I bet they beat their wives and rape them. They haven't said that yet, but I'm sure they will before the end of this. Before the end of this review. I mean, this is the Guardian after all, isn't it? The high wire balance between scientific credibility and human interest is always a tricky one to pull off. Other pictures, the Imitation Games, yeah, they mentioned the Imitation Game. What is the Imitation Game? Anyway, I'm going to Google it because 3 reviews now have mentioned it. Any of you seen it? Let's have a look. I've not seen the Imitation. The Imitation Game 2014. Oh, it's got him as well. Here we go. It's got Cumberbatch in as well. The Imitation Game is an American historical drama directed by Morton Tylerman, written by Graham Moore, based on the biography Alan Turing, The Enigma. Oh right, it's about Alan Turing, yeah. Stars Benedict Cumberbatch and as Alan Turing. I've heard of this film. I wanted to go and see it because I'm interested in the Turing story because of the Helen Duncan issue, as I've said before. Where was I? Back to the lovely soy-filled, estrogen-ridden pages of The Guardian. Where are we? Okay. The Theory of Everything being recent examples. As I said, I saw The Theory of Everything. It was all right, but it was not as good as Hawking by the BBC. And that's actually Hawking is actually starred Benedict Cumberbatch as well. They have skewed towards the more accessible end of the spectrum, man, by emphasising the personal stories that upholster the hard edges of obsessive theoretical minds. But despite, or perhaps because of, an early bereavement in Edison's personal life as a character, he has all the warmth of a circuit diagram. This wouldn't necessarily be a problem. Another Cumberbatch performance in The Imitation Game was similarly angular and unapproachable. Don't know what that bloody means. But the Venn diagram intersection between the 2 key characters here. See, 2 key characters, not 3. See Tesla, of course, is kind of written out of it, isn't he? Yeah. Between the 2 key characters here, it's filled with physics and grudges, but no actual interaction to speak of. Well, no, because they didn't interact much because they hated each other. There is interaction in the form of them trying to undermine each other from a distance. And they speak on the phone at one point where Westinghouse threatens Edison with a scandal, and then they meet at the World Fair. So, anyway. Michael Midnick's exposition-heavy screenplay contains 2 fleeting, presumably fictional, encounters between the pair and just 1 conversation. Well, if you want a punch-up, go and watch the bloody wrestling. Go and watch the boxing. Something of a satellite in the story is Nikola Tesla, played by Nicholas Hoult. Arguably the most interesting character, and certainly the one who is most underused here. Oh! Now that's more like it, because that's actually... He was underused. I mean, he's underused generally, of course. But that's an interesting position there from The Guardian. I think obviously they thought that was quite an interesting character, yeah. Because, yeah, I mean, in a sense, I don't think the reviewer sees things the way I do, but she's pointing out the she's pointing out the kind of the different ways in which you can downplay someone within a story. Oh, here we go. Likewise, the female characters, Catherine Waterston as Westinghouse's wife. Yeah. Marguerite makes an impression, but her role is mainly to deliver pithy pep talks while wearing an electric blue frocks. Edison's first wife, Mary, played by Tuppence Middleton, is a cursory presence. His second wife, Mina, is excised from the story altogether. These evil white men. Oh, evil white men. Interestingly, I mean, I'm surprised the Guardian didn't mention this, but they had their token black people in there. But the token black people were not actually. They were not inserted obtrusively into the story. They were in roles where they might well appear in real life. For example, one is a news reporter. Another is he's a guy he's like a sort of a technician at Edison's factory. And another is at the original party scene with George Westinghouse. Now that's where you would in real life actually you may get the occasional black person in scenes like that. They haven't crowbarred a black person in. They haven't rolled like a square peg into a round hole, as they have in many of the films nowadays, and Doctor Who, where they put a woman in to play the Doctor and things like that. It's done very tastefully, and it's done respectfully, I think. I think if of course they'd replaced one of the main characters with a black person, they have a black person playing one of the main characters, I would be horrified by that. And of course the Guardian would love it, and they call me a racist for not liking that, Of course, I could explain to them, oh yeah, but it's just about accuracy. If they remade Zulu and they had white people playing the Zulus, I'd be equally horrified. I'd refuse to watch the film. But of course they won't listen to that. Anyway, I'm not going to go on a Guardian rant now. That's what they have to say about the movie. Actually, before we go, I'll just have a quick look at Rotten Tomatoes. This is the review aggregator. It's kind of like the critics of the critics. And the current war is given 29% on the tomatometer, and that's not good. That's low. So that's a shame. But to be honest, a lot of the criticism all these critics have made of the film is perfectly fair. It was lacking in a lot. I mean, some of them, like they said, they're lacking electric, warmth of the circuit diagram, not sparky enough. All these electricity metaphors they make and think they're being witty. It's true, though. It's true, I must admit. And that was disappointing. But that's not, in a sense, as you know, I was approaching the film from an entirely different angle, so my criticism of it is there. I don't think it was a very good film, but I think it was a bad film for a different reason. That I think is the key thing here.
So that concludes my review of The Current War, starring Benedict Cumberbatch and a couple of other people I don't know. Please do go and see it. It's very good, but it's not as good as you might want it to be if you're in this sort of field of thought. Hospital Porter's Pride and Dignity, stop the New World Order.